if you could share a prayer for us to get us started, if you could, please.
Wonderful.
Oh, wonderful.
Kasila, statung el heche, taku heche wong spe unkichu ktinka, lena unkichu aste una. O heche taku eto wong spe unkichu ktikile trokata ke, yuha umiapina. Oyate ki unspeona ho heta taku aste tra inkta heche chetichel. Inka unkita kwea wahuto pa heche wu chunglak ok inkan. Ka wong spe kilena watoho unkoka friga vena. Ja, heche I ungla kok yunkan. Hoeche taki hawa stekta heche hoichiche. Ona apetu mji el hekta ke unglana ake tokel. E hani unkoyan pike he yechefti. Unkoyan piktelo hechefti. Chechiche lotu gashla unchimukilana. Mitaki o heche vaniche ko upta ton yana. Ejit konjin kalukta heche hoi walo. O mitakas.
Oh, Pidamaya, actually, a beautiful prayer. So yeah, again, for those of you that are joining us on Zoom, it's a regular Zoom meeting. So if you could make sure and stay muted if possible, so that way we don't interrupt the flow of our presenters of actually Richard and Ethleen, Ethleen. So with that, I'll turn over the reins to our presenters today. So, Pidama.
Oh ja, okay. La kole wag la kikte yunkan. O heche la honey. Nkita toke. O unyapi. No, te kilene wichi hakam. Nkoba nipina. Eta heche taku oyute na heche hapi na taku ilagu yankte kilene unkichuk. O heche la nako pahuto palena wakampi. O cha eta wonspe unkichuk yunkan wichakpi tra wonspe wichakpi tra woglake wa helyanke. O cha ho he ashna. Oyate ki hechel. Dokil hechel out oyate ki onyo pina. No koche tuktekte woche ke kaga pina. O hechel out. Etan heche wonspe kile heche otrabia mo oni pi ehani. So at this time, what I said in Lakota, for those that don't understand, is we're going to talk today about our four-legged relatives and how we follow them for sustenance and how we use them for in partnership with them. And we believe that they are a gift from the Creator. And so, in the creation stories and in the Lakota star knowledge, they play an integral part in our lives and how we became who we are. So it was from the Pte Oyate, the Buffalo Nation, that we learned the star knowledge and how to follow as the sun goes through these constellations. It mirrored also a sacred spot on earth. So we followed the sacred spiritual calendar and we followed and did the ceremonies at the proper places at the proper time. So that way we were in tune with the universe. And also in the creation stories, the buffalo, the Pte Oyate, uh, are in that. And there's a story about the great race around the Black Hills and how the animals raced and who raced for us, the humans, was the magpie, us, the two-legged. And so the story goes that they ran around this sacred land uh, they circled it 4 times. And while they were running, a lot of the animals died. Their feet bled, and then they hemorrhaged from their mouths and noses, and they left a red circle around the Chesapa. Uh, and so, if you look at a picture from the a satellite of video, there's a picture where it shows the red racetrack around the Black Hills, the Chesapa, as we call it. And the older way of saying the Black Hills is Huitapaha, means it. You translate it, and it means the island hill. So, so that's the story, and the story goes that this magpie uh, crossed the finish line right before the buffalo. So it would have been reversed if the buffalo won, then we would have provided them sustenance. And but because the magpie won for us, then they became our food and our sustenance. So I had one of my grandchildren ask me one time. He said, "Grandpa," he said, "so how would we become their food?" So I said, "We probably would have all perished and went into the ground and became grass." I said, "and the buffalo would have ate us." I said, that's one way that I could think of. I said, so so in this in the teaching of the buffalo, the story is there in the creation story of the great race and how we became. Uh, I don't like to use the word dominate, but we became dependent on them, and they helped us to live. And there's estimated anywhere to 50 to 80 million buffalo that roam this Midwest and the plains up into Canada, down into as far as Mexico at one time before the coming of the European people. So, Pte Oyate Tawicoyake, teachings from the Buffalo Nation. O unki tawapi ki Pte Oyate eto unki chupi yelo. We patterned our way of life from the buffalo. So if you threaten the buffalo, the bulls make a circle on the outside, and they protect the cows, the calves, and the old buffalo. The waka in our culture is the old people. And then also this is called the Ohokishni. The cows and the calves are the Ohokishni. So today in our culture, we still use that term. The Ohokishni is the females, the children, and the old people.
No,
So
no, 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 no. I need to see the thing.
buffalo would made to the buffalo learn to protect them, and so our bravest warriors would go out and form a circle around the people. And this is what today, if you approach a group of a herd of buffalo and they see uh, that there might be danger, this is what they will do. So they move to the outside and protect uh, the buffalo. The other ones are the Ohunkishni. So the strongest bull will come out to protect the buffalo. So there's always like a leader that will come out from the bulls. The strongest one would come out and be the first to take on the enemy. So that was how our ancestors would do it also. So uh, we see that when we go to harvest a buffalo, is these bulls will encircle the other buffalo. So after the great slaughter of American bison during the 1800s, the number of bison remaining alive in North America declined from 60 million to as low as 541 in 1890. So the last free roaming herd they discovered was up in northwestern South Dakota in an area called the Slim Buttes. And they found a herd of buffalo there. So they asked Sitting Bull, the Hunkpapkas, if they wanted to go hunt them. So they struck their teepees and they went up in that area, and they had a buffalo hunt up there, and it was the last one that is known. A communal hunt was done by Sitting Bull and his people. In our language, a communal hunt was called a wanasapi, where the people went out as a group, and the warriors went forward. The best hunters went forward, uh, and there was always a warrior society that was designated to keep order and make sure nobody went ahead and killed buffalo for himself, because they, as a communal hunt, they did it in a way where everybody will benefit. So everybody will start the chase together. Nobody will go ahead and kill buffalo before the other people and scare the rest off. So these, like the Chantet Inza Okola Kiche, the Strong Heart Society, the Strong Hearts, if they were designated, then they will keep order and make sure nobody moves ahead. There was also the Tokala Warrior Society. And I think grandfather Sitting Bull's Warrior Society was the Chantet Inza. But those were two warrior societies that was among our people. And there's several other, I think there was 7 warrior societies altogether. Um, so they would go as a group, and then they killed those buffalo up there, but they saved about 500 head. Um, and a man from Cheyenne River Reservation went, and he was half Washichu and half Lakota. His last name was Dupree. He was part French. He saved about 300 head. He was able to get about 300 head. So uh, they killed about maybe a little over 300 head, and then he saved 200 head and was allowed to take them back to Cheyenne River. So he started one of the first buffalo ranches there. And then they also found a herd where now Yellowstone Park is. They found a herd there. So they preserved them, kept them inside the park boundaries, and they made sure nobody killed them off, because all the roaming buffalo were killed by hide hunters, our people. Uh, just killed them for their hides, and then a lot of them just killed them for their tongues, because out east, the buffalo tongue was a delicacy. So that's how a lot of them were killed, and they were killed when the railroads came through. First Northern Pacific Railroad came through. Uh, they hunted off of these trains, and they would do what they would do is they would kill the Unchi buffalo. So there's a Unchi that oversees everything, like the social system of the Pte Oyate. This Unchi controls pretty much what happens, kind of like our society. So, like in our Tioshbais, the Unchi carries a lot of power, has a lot of say so in what happens. So, if a lot of times this Unchi would be what would oversee where she would not allow certain buffalo of the same bloodline to breed with the other female buffalo. So this Unchi was a group of some of the other buffalo, the younger males, would drive these bulls out so that they won't intermix their bloodlines. So if you ever see a buffalo herd, even in the ones in the parks now, you're gonna see some bulls off by themselves. So these are the ones that were, as they say, driven out of the herd because they were of the same bloodline. So it's good to rotate. If you could get new breeding bulls, it's good to rotate them in there because this unchi will not allow them to breed with the young female buffalo. So they have like a matriarchal society like we do. So any of you know that all of us as Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people, and even other people, other tribes, other nations know that Unchi carries a lot of weight in the Teoshpai. Unchi has a lot of say so in what happens. So so that's how some of the buffalo were saved at this time, and I think if they didn't allow the Hunkpapas to go up there and hunt them, if they let it to like sportsmen or other people just to hunt them, they would have killed all of them, and we won't have any now. So it was a blessing that they allowed the Hunkpapas to hunt these buffalo. So this is a quote from the chief Red Cloud. He said, Red Cloud indicated in his last speech to the people in 1903, we told them, meaning the government officials, that the supernatural powers had given to the Lakota the buffalo for food and clothing. We told them that where the buffalo ranged, that was our country. We told them that the country of the buffalo was the country of the Lakota. We told them that the buffalo must have their country and the Lakota must have their buffalo. So he's talking about what I mentioned earlier about the Lakota star knowledge also, which is the sacred sites that we follow throughout the year. So these buffalo move to those sacred sites every year at the same time because they know that the sun goes through a certain constellation that mirrors or connects or coincides with the sacred place on earth. So they say, Taku makpea tawakhan ki he makha ekta. What is sacred above is also sacred below. So this is what he's talking about. And you can see some unchis making papa, dried meat. You see all the meat that they have hung up there. Uh, and so this is off of that picture. This picture is off of that hunt that happened in the Slim Buttes country of northwestern South Dakota. So there's a man that heard about Lakota star knowledge. So he was happened to be uh, working at Sichanghu University on the Rosebud Reservation, and he heard mentions of star knowledge. So he did further research, and his name was Ronald Goodman, and he took one of the elders, a man named Stanley Redbird, with him, and he went in the community and he interviewed people's knowledge of the stars and the constellations and what they meant to us. And so he came onto this reservation and interviewed elders and several medicine men. One was a man named Matthew Bearshield from Wounded Knee. He interviewed him. Another one he interviewed was Another one that he interviewed was Frank Foolscroft of that lived in Kyle. So these holy men he interviewed, and then he also interviewed elders in the community and wrote this book called Lakota Star Knowledge, which you can still get it off of like Amazon and different places like that. So that book is available, and the Oglala Lakota College here on this reservation uses it in their curriculum uh, in the Lakota culture class. So, so Red Cloud talks about the importance of the land and the sacred sites, along with the sacredness of the buffalo. So we learned this star knowledge off of them. And I heard a person say that uh, that the other Lakota, Dakota, Nakota tribes never had this. It's just Oglala, he said. So I said, no, that's not true because the star knowledge was a part of the Ocheti Shakoi and all the nations that are under the Ocheti Shakoi. Uh, but I think this gentleman never heard about it. So because he doesn't know about it, then he's trying to say it doesn't exist. But it's there because there's even uh, hide, buffalo hide or deer hide maps of these sacred sites. And you can see a copy of it in that Lakota Star Knowledge book. You could see the map of the country where these sacred sites are at, and how they correlate with the constellations in the sky. So this is a picture of the star map here. So you can see the different ceremonies, the sun dance. They go to Iankaga by Sundance, Wyoming to gather rocks for the Sundance. The spring pipe ceremony, which is held on Iankaga Paha. And lately that name's been changed from Harney Peak to Black Elk Peak. So General William S. Harney was back in the 1800s. He killed a bunch of Sichangu relatives at a place called Blue Water. So they call it the Battle of Blue Water, but it was actually a massacre because the men were off hunting, and he took the opportunity to attack this village and he killed women and children, and he took some hostage while the men were away. So it's interesting that when they win, they call it a battle, but uh, or when we win, they call it a massacre. But when they win, they call it a battle. So that's how uh, they named that mountain after him in the Black Hills. So now I'm glad that it's been changed to the name named after the holy man Black Elk, who's a author of the book Black Elk Speaks. On the Some of you may have the we're fortunate enough to read that book, but there's a lot of interesting stories in there and talks about the life of uh, grandfather Black Elk as a holy man. So one of the things we're doing as a people is we are reconnecting with the Pte Oyate. So people continue now the spring journey to the sacred sites. They make offerings on behalf of the Pte Oyate, the Buffalo Nation. We continue now to acknowledge their sacredness and connection to our existence. So last year, when the people gathered to welcome back the thunder on the first day of spring up at Black Elk Peak, the spiritual name is Hihankaga Paha, which is impersonating an owl mountain. So we have our own names for these sacred sites, these places. So there was probably close to 500 people that gathered there to make offerings. So at one time, it was just a very few people went and made these offerings because a lot of this knowledge was gone, that people forgot it. But there was still pockets of people here and there that hung on to the knowledge. So they would still continue to make prayers at these places. And I think a lot of their prayers are being answered now because people are learning about these things and starting to make the spiritual journeys there and make the prayer. So these people that never gave up, I think their prayers are being answered today. So one of the things that uh, we do as a people is we go to we when we do a hunt to harvest one of our relatives, we pick a young man to do that. And so he goes into the Inipi, the sacred sweat lodge, for 4 nights, and he's talked to by the older people in this Inipi, the older men, talk to him about his duties as a young man, a young warrior, uh, a young Lakota man, and how to grow up and go into manhood. So one of the stories that I share with them is to be generous. So long ago, there was whenever the Lakotas were camped, then when a man that is generous was going on a hunt, he'll be leading his pack horse and he'll have his weapons and he'll be going. And so those unchis would see him going. So those unchis will say, Pte Oyate, who is that going? And if it's a generous man, then they name a generous man, then those unchis will say, Haye. That's how women uh, like praise somebody. So they'll say Haye, and then they would put their pots on to boil. They put water on their pots and they sharpen their knives because they know that this person is going to share what he kills. And then, sure enough, that man will come and maybe he'll have a buffalo on his pack horse quartered or like that. Or maybe he has a couple of deer. So he would come by and maybe cut off a hind quarter and give it to these unchis to cut up and make soup. But then when they see a man that is not generous and they see him going, they'll say, Pte Oyate, who is that is going? And if it's a man that's stingy, they know that he's not going to share their meat with them. They say Akshaka, and they just go on about their business. They don't start their pots boiling or anything because they know he's not going to share with them. So that's the story. One of the stories I share with the young man, and to be that man that these unchis praise and always look out for the sick and the elderly. And then other men in there have stories for them too. Some about their own experiences like that. So after the 4 days, on the fifth day, he goes on the hunt. So he usually have his male relatives, and then we will go to from the family to Tioshpa. So our Tioshpa grow buffalo, and we have about 51 head now, and we usually harvest at least 3 or 4 throughout the year. So two of them are for Sundance, and then uh, one is to use for the ceremonies throughout the winter. So we harvest these buffalo, and we have these young men as they come of age around 13, 14, 15, maybe 16. They harvest the buffalo, so they wear a feather when they go out, and we paint them, and then when they kill the buffalo, a prayer is made, and we take some loose tobacco and we sprinkle it in front of the nose of the buffalo while it's lying there, and we make a prayer for this buffalo for its journey to Nagiata, the spirit world, and we make a prayer for this young man that he'll be successful in life also. So when I was young, I was 16 years old. I went on this. It's called Wichasha Ihunipi, becoming of man ceremony. This soul ceremony here, but we didn't have buffalo in the family, or all the buffalo were in the parks. So I went with my father and I killed a deer up in the area of west of the reservation, west of Pine Ridge. And so I and my father gutted the buffalo, and then we took it to this old man. His last name was Crazy Thunder. So we gutted the buffalo, a deer, and then took it to him and his wife. So he sang a song for me. He honored me with a song, and then we unloaded the buffalo out of my father's pickup. I mean, a deer out of the pickup, and then we helped him butcher it. So they were really appreciative of getting the deer at that time. So he sang a song kind of to praise me, like a praise song for me. So I always remember that. So that was my Wichasha Ihuni, the coming of man ceremony. So now we're fortunate that we have buffalo on the reservation. Like we have our own herd, and then some other people have their own herds, and then the tribe has, I think, about around a little over somewhere around 1,200 head in our tribal herds, and they're split up in two different pastures. The Oglalas here have about 1,200 head, so they also sell them at a reduced price to the tribal members if they use them. They want to kill one for a Sundance, or when they kill them for the wakes and stuff, or like that, to help people out who lost a loved one. So these ceremonies are starting to come back again. So these young boys hear about it and they learn about it, and they want to participate when they get older. It's kind of like they see their older brothers and their cousins doing this, so they want to be a part of it also. So that's really an honor to do that. So when when these young men kill this buffalo, it's used at the Sundance to feed like the singers and the guests that come there. So that is their manhood ceremony. So Mahasani, ano ko pinakayo?
Ha,
Dakon le hayachi.
ha. Waki. Toka wopila tranka achiche Mahasani le wocheke yakage na le wonspe. Uyakupi.
Wow.
I think my my other half for his wocheke, his prayer, and also for the teaching that he's giving. And I want to welcome all of the people, the relatives that are listening in and viewing the screen. I think one of the biggest teachings for me, as far as the Pte Oyate, is whenever there is a ceremonial hunt, that every hunt should be ceremonial. So like making prayers, like whenever you're going to do the harvest, the hunt, then prayers should be made in advance, and making prayer flags, prayer ties, and hanging them out someplace, and connecting with the spirit of the unchi of the herd, because in every herd, in every tioshpai, there's a unchi that is watching over, and is because they're spiritual beings, then they know when we're thinking about, taking one of them, taking one of the relatives, and they know if we do make offerings, if we are doing it in a humble, respectful, spiritual way. So I think that's, for me, that was one of the biggest biggest understandings that I have that I learned, is that, the respect, the wayuoniha, the waohola, the respect and honor for them as relatives. So, if we were to go to a family, a tioshpai, and say, can I take one of your young boys, um and take them from your family, then the family and the tioshpai would be very sad, about letting that that relative go. And it's the same way, I think, for the Pte Oyate, is they value each other, as relatives, and it's evident by, like what Mahasani said about, they protect the vulnerable ones, the ohunkeshni, the sick ones, the female, the elders, the children, the young ones. And if they didn't value each other, they wouldn't protect them. They wouldn't protect each other like that. So just think about that whenever you're going to do this hunt. Then make offerings and talk to the spirit of the unchi of the herd and ask her. We humbly ask for one of your relatives, and this is why we were asking for one of your relatives. What is it for? Is it to feed the people? Is it to in Western society, there's something called trophy hunting, where they try to get, these hunters will go out and they'll try to get the biggest buffalo bull, and then they take their head and they hang it on the wall. Those are our relatives, and we wouldn't think of doing that. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is we do have one coming up here. One of our Pakojas, one of our grandsons, is going to do a ceremonial hunt, the Wichasha Ihunipi, becoming a man ceremony. He's going to start on the 21st of November, 22nd, 23rd, 24th for 4 nights. Then, like Mahasani said, then the male relatives will take responsibility for giving him teachings about how to transition from a boy to a young man, and what is his role and responsibility as a Lakota Koskalaka, a young man. What changes from being being a little boy to being a young man. And they do that for 4 nights, and then they also teach him about connecting with that the spirit of the buffalo that is going to be is going to be hunted. Because if those offerings are made right away, like then the unchi has already designated one of her relatives to sacrifice themselves, and then that relative knows. So all of these things like this, require wowichala, and the wowichala is the belief system. We could we could share these things, but if people don't really believe that these buffalo are relatives, that they have a spirit, that they have their own societal structure, then we're we're not doing them, our ancestral teachings, we're not doing them honor, we're not honoring them as gifts. So I just wanted to mention that. Then I know that there's a lot more to doing the ceremonial hunt, and I'll turn it back over to Mahasani. Hilamaya.
Yeah. Waka mish I think that the taku waste na wakang iwongla kale etan taku waste trankte trokata na hakre khahia hekta ke unglockt. So I just wanted to say that these ways will come back through doing it and through our prayers by these young people watching and seeing. We don't know it, but they watch everything and they see everything and they remember everything. So slowly coming back. I always say the Washitu, the white man, like led us way out somewhere and left us like in total darkness. So we slowly find our way back in the darkness, but we're finding our way back, and we will achieve it. Our language, our ceremonies, all of these things will slowly get them back. That's my belief. So that's it.
Toshka, are there any do you have any questions, or maybe there's questions from the people that are on Zoom?
Opida Chichapido. Actually, Tui, thank you for sharing so much with us. But yeah, let's there's a number of people that are on the call. You can either maybe type your question in the chat and I'll read it out to everybody, or it is a Zoom meeting, so you can unmute if you want and ask your questions directly. I would remind those of you that are on that both these individuals just have a lot of knowledge. So I definitely encourage you to, any questions that you have, definitely feel free to ask, because there's just a good opportunity to learn here. So anybody, don't make me start calling on you. Okay. I guess, there's just a lot of information here. I know that in the future, I would like to be able to reach back out to both Tekshi and Tui in the future, because at the college, we have a lot of programming where we're trying to reintroduce some of these cultural teachings and star knowledge, and there's just a lot that we don't know. And so if any of you that are on the call that are being Wishtecha, if you're a little nervous, it's all good. I can reach out to both these individuals later.
I did want to mention, Toshka, that one thing that I think people don't realize is that the Pte Oyate, the Tatanka, they will distinguish between plants and weeds and things that are harmful for them. So whenever they whatever they eat, it's medicine, and so that medicine becomes a part of their their body. So whenever we eat buffalo meat, we're actually eating medicine. And one of the things that they're really intelligent, I think they're the ultimate conservationists, because whenever they graze, then they don't graze in one spot. They'll move all over the the country to preserve their or conserve their food source. And then they also do not pull the roots up like cows do. They'll wrap their tongue around the blade of grass or medicine, and they'll break it off, and then they'll eat that and leave the roots so that their food source will grow again. They also make these buffalo wallows, and in these buffalo wallows, then they they create indentation in the earth, and whenever those indentations, those wallows fill up with water, then new plants come up. And so basically they're replenishing, they're taking care of the earth too. And my granddaughter did a kind of like a mini study, and she analyzed some soil that from a buffalo pasture where there was actual buffalo there. And then she took soil from another pasture where there was cows, and the soil from the buffalo pasture was rich in nutrients and minerals, and the soil from the cattle pasture was the minerals and the nutrients were depleted. So it's kind of like dead soil, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of science, behind it, behind their way of life. And we as Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people, we really need to make sure that they are part of our lifeways and part of our life. Our children and our grandchildren understand the importance of the buffalo, and their and to follow their way of life, like Mahasani shared. They protect, and that's the role of the warriors, but not only male warriors but warrior women. That's their role, to protect, and to also to follow what they teach us about facing challenges. So they'll turn around and they'll face like a threat, and they'll, if there's a storm coming, they turn around and face it. And they also, like I said, they conserve, and they're really it's really hard. It's kind of sad, I think, to understand too that what happened to us, as Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people, we were put on reservations, and we were fenced in. And at one time, we couldn't even leave the reservation. We had to ask the reservation agent if we could even leave and, go. We couldn't hunt, we couldn't do anything. And when the buffalo were almost wiped out, the few that were left, now they're put into pastures. At one time they could roam. And so they're kind of suffering the same conditions that we are. They're fenced in. They only have so much to roam in, and we at one time were able to roam and to hunt and to be free all across this continent. But now we're on reservations too, so we're I guess relatives suffering the same fate. But we really have to help each other. So I wanted to share that, and I really appreciate you asking us to share, because we're still learning too. We have my one of my greatest blessings is to be a part of the ceremonies where we're given teachings from the Tunkashila, from the Nahiata, from the spirit world. And so I really try to take those teachings to heart. And whenever we're given teachings about the buffalo, it's like we're really, really fortunate, to be able to have, relatives that, we're providing a home for, but they take care of us more than we take care of them, So if we think of it that way, as a kind of like a wotakuye, the kinship system, then, then it becomes different, a different way of thinking, a different way of life. I want to let you know that we will make prayers for your hunt too on Saturday. I think you said you're going to do a hunt, and because they're medicine. Whenever we eat them, then one of the things we tell our young man that is going to do the hunt is to have a new knife, and that new knife, they'll cut the throat of the buffalo, and then they'll catch his blood in a cup, and then they share it with the people that are there. And ideally, if it's possible, if there's people with sicknesses, then to share it with them too. We've been really colonized, and oppressed to where people will gag and people will make faces and all of that. They think that it's terrible to drink buffalo blood, but that's medicine, and it can cure anything. So, but again, that requires woichala, having a belief in it. So hopefully we'll get back to that state of mind where we are connected with the buffalo. We do believe that they are relatives and that they can help us. So with that, I'm gonna, if there's no other questions, then I'm gonna ask Mahasani to say a closing prayer, or if you want to say something in closing.
Oh, it looks like there's one more question here before we wrap it up here. Was one of the participants asked is, are there ways we can help care for our buffalo? Because we have a pretty large tribal herd as well here at Fort Peck. Is there any way we can help care for our buffalo as a community throughout the season and not just during harvest? Question. Just thinking about being better partners or relatives. Dokri Dukcha.
Mahasani?
Le tuktelogonal ki hele ob da kukcha money pihant. Sale Pte Oyate Lena I headset ki awichai tabna I won't chaka wotake ogin hunter headset down ob onya pikte headset mie I won't black. Sa Mahasani meet you yes.
Okay. Mahasani asked me to translate for him, and he said that the what he thinks in response to that question is to change our way of thinking, to treating them, viewing them, thinking of them as relatives and treat them accordingly. So, like say the unchi of the herd. So, what we do is almost every quarter, I think, if not, sometimes we do it more. We make offerings and we pray for them because in their society and in their life, then they have threats and challenges too. Just like we pray for, our human relatives, when they get sick or when they are facing something, then, we make offerings. So, and even if they don't have threats and challenges, then we make offerings to give thanks. So that's on a pretty regular basis that we do that. The other thing that is done is we the pasture that we have, then we every year, every fall, then we put up new offerings on the four corners of the fence, the pasture. And the reason we do that is we don't want any kind of sickness or threats to come in there. But we also appeal in a humble way to the buffalo, to stay in there because they do they can jump pretty high, like even an 8-foot fence, we've seen them go over, and um, they will, try to roam. And so we ask them through the offerings, to stay in their pasture. I know it's hard, for them to do that, but that's another reason we do that, to keep the threats out, but also for them to stay in. So, and then if you go along the fence, then you're going to see buffalo hair, and so gather that too, and that's medicine in and of itself. Just a little ball of buffalo hair, if somebody has like sinus issues or headaches, then they can pray and burn that, and inhale it. So there's a lot of different ways that our buffalo relatives help us. So whenever we have like a womanhood ceremony, we use a buffalo robe, and we teach that young girl that the spirit of that buffalo is in that hide that she's sitting on. We use the buffalo skull in that ceremony. We use the buffalo skulls in the Sundance ceremony. So I think one of our responsibilities as humans is to share the importance and significance of the Buffalo Nation relatives to our children. So what would that look like? So maybe taking the children out to, the pasture and showing them and offering a prayer out there for the buffalo, but also for the children to be connected with them, through their minds and their spirit, so that they will grow up knowing, how important that relationship is. So there's just, to me, there's so much, that, within the schools, if they just had a whole, curriculum on the sacredness of the buffalo, that would be really, really powerful, So that's what I try to translate the best my ability of what Mahasani said, but I also added on my thoughts. So, Pilamaya.
Oh, Shte. In our previous discussions that I had last week, there was some other interesting conversations that we had that I think the participants that are on this call would probably benefit from a little bit. And one was a story that actually Rick shared about the spleen of the animal, the buffalo that I think he harvested, or his first deer. Is that something you could share again about what that means for the winter as a predictor?
Okay. My father, the one that shared that with me, we went to harvest one from the tribal herd, a buffalo for the Sundance, and when we butchered it, he said to get the spleen and show it to him. So we cut it off. It was about 5 of us doing the butchering, gutting. So we brought the spleen to him, and he said that his grandfather taught him that you look at the spleen, and if it's thin, and then if it goes thick, then it's gonna be a hard winter. But if the spleen is thin all the way across, then it's gonna be a mild winter. So he said that's how long ago they knew, one of the ways that they knew about what kind of winter it was gonna be. So I learned that from him.
Oh, understood. Hankashi, Alex has a question. She's on the call. You can feel free to ask. Oh,
Namaya kumpiha.
oh,
Oh, Dekshi Tui, Wopida Tanka Chichiapi for sharing your knowledge and being on this Zoom. I kind of arrived a little late, but when I hopped on, I heard you Tui mentioning about making Chandi Wapachta during a hunt. Could you share how many ties you are to make and which colors?
Toja. Wopila. Wa uye ya piki topa na to sha zi ba na chanlia pakta ki wiktemana num ke shagloka. The prayer flags are blue, red, yellow, white, and the tobacco ties are 28 blue. And usually whenever we have a young man going through the ceremony, he and his family bring those every night, every evening to the inipi. So if you have a inipi plan before your hunt, then you can hang them in there. But if you don't, mahasani. Cholia pachta na wa uya piktuktel otka pikta.
Le tuktetu hekte oktaid. Katfanka hekte oktaid. El tuktel ikela otkabuki.
So you can, if you don't have inipi planned, then you can hang those wokage, those offerings in the like near where you're going to have that buffalo hunt, near the pasture somewhere out there. Hecha to he.
Pida mayayapi.
wow. One other question that I had, just for our own learning, we want to make sure and trying to provide, I guess, language learning opportunities through our buffalo hunts. Is there any information that you would direct us to, or language resources around that you might use, or that you know in your community that they use, that you could share with us or point us in the right direction?
Mahasani ognash wocheke gaga pikte toha manasaya pikteki ognash he wonspe yakuki lila wopilakte. I asked Mahasani to share a wocheke that you can use or that you can say whenever you go on the hunt, with respect specifically to the Pte Oyate, to the buffalo. Oyake he, Mahasani.
Otsayale, mkie, onji mktepchan, tobacco he, chanli he, panaki he, le ptewan ktepi, tratrankan ktepi ki he, pitchokav, helt tuktel makailon kalonus no wachionke. De toke wachionke ki he o eat kasila unkita ko ichichu eton eate ki chanik tata. Ichichu sa heche Kanagi ki katia nagiata ina hecha tita ko eton oyopi. Hecha ihoni na hecha oinkte. Na petu mzee unkisha unkukte lo. Hecha le oyate ki le chespitra ki yutana. Pejuta ognakel. Iwan kapina eta wichozani. Na woki ichukte. Na tokata ngana wakana istoa ngana kuze hechi wichozani ichukte. Na wakanki lena eta was ake. Ichuna kapia ha niukta hecha. Hoi chichapelo unkea bashni. Mitake asi.
Wopila. So the tobacco, whenever the buffalo is killed, then the tobacco is sprinkled in front of them on the ground, and then the prayer is that the buffalo is taken from their relatives for so that the people will live, and that help the spirit of the buffalo to go to the spirit world, and then that we will follow at some point in the future to the spirit world, and that whenever we eat the buffalo meat, then we will be strong, and that anybody, like maybe elders that are sick, will receive it as medicine and will be strong too. So that kind of hechit to it, Mahasani. Dakun ewak
Hechit.
tu.
Yeah, hechit.
So that's like a kind of like an overview of the translation of the prayer. But you do have this recording, so you can listen to it and then learn that wocheke. But that's basically the translation.
Ake woi wanka wan bruha. Hana, one of the questions was from long ago, did they have to worry about parasites or anything like that when butchering?
One of the things I know about naturally raised buffalo is that there isn't any concern about that, because they're not subject to these the fertilizer that's put in the ground. They're not subject to those shots, those hormones to make them grow bigger or fatter. Any kind of vaccines or vaccinations, and they're naturally raised, so that isn't a concern for us. So, but if you go to a feedlot where they raise buffalo, then you're going to have to be concerned about that. I know that one time we had gotten a gift from the southwest of some buffalo, and because they were crossing state lines, then they had to get make sure that they got some kind of a vaccination. And so, but we always make prayers about it, and I think if the prayers are sincere, then everything will work out and the offerings are made. So well, I guess one concern is that whenever you do a hunt in the summertime, then you have to make sure that you get that, that you butcher, process that buffalo right away, or get it into a cool place, because it can spoil really fast, So that's the only thing that I can think of as far as like a health risk. Mahasani, ayate.
Yeah, that's so usually when we take one in like say early June or early July, or sometimes in June or July, we go real early in the morning while it's cool. So by the time we have the buffalo down and gutted, like that. We try to beat that the morning heat. So that way none of the meat was spoiled. We haven't had one spoil on us yet. So and then when they did their communal hunt long ago, then they did it usually right around early fall, like so that it was cool also. But um individually going out and hunting, they would do it early in the morning too.
And then what is the significance of taking the bite of the liver? Dokari Duksha.
That liver is full of iron. So when our ancestors ate that and drank the blood also, because the blood and the kidneys are full of iron. So we never ever worried about being anemic. Now a lot of our people are anemic and they have to take pills for it and stuff, but because they're so full of iron that even like a deer, when they killed a deer, they would eat the raw liver because they knew that it had the nutrients in there to sustain them. So we never had no problems with anemia long ago.
Ake wopira tanka chichapido. Dexy Richard, Tui, Ethleen, for your time, for sharing with us. You've been very generous with your teachings and for all your prayers. So again, on behalf of Fort Peck Community College and our community and everyone on our call today, again, we really do appreciate you helping us out. And we look forward to visiting with you more again down the road and hopefully in person next time we're in your part of the country again. So with that, there's anyone closing comments that you might have, that's all we have here on this side.
One thing I'd like to encourage relatives is to do a wopila whenever the hunt is done, and to make some, offerings, again, the same offerings, the 28 blue and the 4 prayer flags, and hang those up too, and say wopila for the life of this relative and for a successful, hunt, because anything can go wrong, in a hunt, and it is very dangerous. So that's why that wocheke, that prayer, is put first. So I wanted to close with that, and I say wopila tanka, all of the people listening, and I'll turn it over to Mahasani for wocheke, closing wocheke.
Mokpia, are you on?
Oh,
You want to sing a song for the closing prayer?
yeah.
Okay.
Wanna?
Ha.
Awe Elohim, Yahweh, Elo, Awe Elohim, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Elohim. Away, Lord, Tao ca sẽ là yai, Tao sẽ là yai, ma phê ya ya, way Lord, way Yahweh, way Lord. Away, Lord, away, Lord, way, away, away, Lord, away, Lord, away, away, Lord, away, I Lord, Lord.
Wopila. Taka.
Wopila. Oja,
Oh.
Pte Oyate.
Oh, Opuda.